You leave the house every morning. You grab your keys, you close the door. Maybe you glance back at the feeder on your way to the car. A cardinal sitting there, a chickadee working through the seeds. And then you pull out of the driveway and you're gone. And you assume, the way most people assume, that the yard just continues, that the birds keep doing what they were doing, that life at the feeder goes on the same way it does when you're watching through the kitchen window. It doesn't. The moment your car disappears around the corner, something changes in your yard, something measurable, something that researchers have now documented with field cameras, acoustic monitors, and behavioral studies that most people will never read. What your birds do the moment you leave is one of the most surprising things science has found about backyard bird behavior. And once you see it, you will never leave the house the same way again. Welcome back to the Avian Mind. Subscribe before you leave, because what you're about to learn happens every single morning in your yard, 30 seconds after you walk away, and it reveals something about your relationship with your birds that most people never get to understand. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover is the one that genuinely stopped researchers when they first saw it on camera, and it happens in your yard, probably today. Section 1. The silence that follows you. Here is what the field cameras show. When a familiar person, someone the birds have seen regularly, someone whose movements they know, leaves a yard, there is a period of stillness that follows. Not the frozen alarm stillness of a predator sighting. Something different. A reset. Researchers studying behavioral changes in garden birds documented this pattern consistently. After a known human departs, birds in the yard enter what behavioral ecologists call a post-disturbance assessment phase. Even a non-threatening human presence creates a low-level background stress signal in the birds nearby. The archopaleum, the bird's threat processing center, never fully powers down while a large animal is present, even a trusted one. The moment you leave, that signal drops, and the birds feel it. The first thing that changes is movement. Birds that were feeding cautiously at the edges of the feeder move to the center. Birds that were watching from branches 15 feet back move in closer. The entire spatial geography of your yard shifts within about 90 seconds of your departure. Your presence, even a safe, trusted, familiar presence, was organizing the yard around itself. And the moment it's gone, the yard reorganizes around something else entirely. What it reorganizes around is the subject of everything that follows. Section 2. The dominance hierarchy you never see. This is the part most people find hardest to believe. The birds at your feeder have a social structure, a hierarchy, a set of rules about who eats first, who waits, who can displace who, and it operates continuously, every moment they are together. But here's what the research shows. That hierarchy runs differently when you are present. Studies on social behavior in mixed feeding flocks found that the presence of a large observing animal, including a trusted human, suppresses certain dominance behaviors. Subordinate birds are more cautious. Dominant birds are slightly less aggressive. The whole social system pulls back from its natural intensity. The moment you leave, the full hierarchy activates. The male cardinal that was sharing feeder space with a house finch while you watched. Within 2 minutes of your departure, he has displaced that finch completely and is feeding alone. The chickadee flock, which appeared loosely organized at the feeder, is now operating on strict rank. The dominant bird feeds. The others wait at specific distances determined entirely by social rank. The lowest-ranking bird in the flock is on the ground beneath the feeder, taking what falls. This is not disorder. This is the natural social structure of your birds, running at full resolution, the version they don't run when a human is watching. What you see at your feeder every morning is a compressed, socially suppressed version of what your birds actually are to each other. The real version starts the moment your car leaves the driveway. Section 3. The sounds they only make when you're gone. Acoustic monitoring studies. Researchers placing microphones in residential gardens and tracking call patterns across the day found something that took multiple replications to fully accept. Certain calls increase in frequency after human departure. Not alarm calls, not territorial song, contact calls. The soft conversational sounds birds use when they are relaxed, coordinated, and operating without threat assessment, running at full power. The quiet rolling chatter of a goldfinch flock. The low gargling exchange between chickadees moving through together. The whispered wren calls that only happen when a bird feels completely unobserved. These sounds are present when you're home, but they are quieter, shorter, less frequent, because even when you're trusted, your presence costs the bird something. A fraction of their attention, a small portion of their cognitive bandwidth, running the background check on a large animal nearby. When you leave, that fraction comes back. And what they do with it, what your birds do with the cognitive space your absence creates, is spend it on each other. The contact call rate goes up. The flock coordination tightens. The social interactions that require full attention, the pair bonding displays, the juvenile begging sequences, the territorial boundary negotiations between neighbors, these intensify in the 20 to 30 minutes after regular human activity in a yard goes quiet. Your yard doesn't go quiet when you leave. It gets louder, just in frequencies and interactions you were never there to hear. Section 4. What they do with your scent trail. This is the section that changes how you think about your physical presence in your yard. Birds, as most people know, have limited olfactory ability compared to mammals. They do not navigate primarily by scent. But several backyard species, robins, wrens, certain sparrows, do use olfactory cues in specific contexts, and research has shown that human scent in a yard creates a detectable environmental signal that birds register and respond to. When you walk through your yard every morning, to the feeder, to the garden bed, along the path to the garage, you leave a scent trail, a physical record of your movement, deposited on the ground, on surfaces, dissipating over the course of several hours. Robins foraging on your lawn after you leave are moving through that trail. Research on American robins in residential settings found that robins adjusted their foraging routes in yards with regular human activity versus yards without it, not just in response to direct presence, but in response to environmental cues, including scent and ground disturbance left behind. Your footsteps compress the soil slightly differently than undisturbed ground. Your scent marks the paths you walk. The robin working through your lawn after you leave is navigating a landscape that still carries the physical record of you. And here is the finding that stops people. Robins in yards, with consistent, non-threatening human scent trails, foraged closer to the house than robins in yards without them. The scent trail of a trusted human did not repel the birds. It oriented them. It was a signal that said, "This part of the yard is safe. Something reliable has been here. You leave the house, but you don't entirely leave the yard." Section 5. What the camera caught. In a long-term behavioral study of garden birds in the UK, cameras running continuously across multiple residential yards. Researchers documented something they had not specifically set out to find. In several yards, within 10 to 15 minutes of the regular human resident departing for the day, specific birds moved to locations they did not occupy while the human was present. A robin that spent its mornings at the far end of the garden moved consistently to the step outside the back door. A pair of blue tits that fed at the far feeder while the homeowner was present switched to the feeder directly outside the kitchen window the moment the house went quiet. They weren't being cautious around the human. They were making a different calculation. The spots closest to the house, the window ledge, the back step, the feeder nearest the door, carry the highest concentration of human scent, the highest density of human presence signals. And for birds that had learned to associate a specific human with safety and food, those spots weren't the most threatening locations in the yard. They were the most desirable. The birds weren't avoiding the human space when the human left. They were moving into it, the back step that you walk past every morning without a second thought, the window ledge you never look at closely, the feeder closest to the door that you assumed birds preferred because of convenience. On the days you leave, the birds closest to you, the ones that have known you longest, that have the strongest suppression signal built around your specific presence, those birds move toward the place in the yard where you are most concentrated, not because you're there, because of what your consistent presence has made that place mean. You leave the house every morning, and you assume the yard continues without you. It does continue, just not the way you imagined. The hierarchy activates. The contact calls increase. The robin moves through the scent trail you left on the lawn. And somewhere near your back door, the bird that has known you longest moves into the space you just vacated, not away from where you were, but toward it. You have been shaping that yard for longer than you knew. And the moment you leave, the full shape of what you've built becomes visible. You just needed a camera to see it. Tell me in the comments, have you ever come home and found a bird somewhere in your yard that surprised you? Closer to the house than usual? Somewhere unexpected? I want to hear the specific story. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next.